back to the cockpit of Ship 41, or Delta DC3. As we looked at the last video, we showed you how to get the DC3 started. So we're sitting here on the ramp at Newark. Again, this is the 1935 mod by Red Wing. And we've had a little weather roll in, as you can see, a little bit of snow, some clouds. In this video, we're going to show you how to do the taxi and the takeoff. And again, we're going to try to follow real-world procedures, real-world checklists, and try to give you a deep dive into some of the systems on the DC3 itself. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we've got our engines warming up here. You can see our oil temperature has already come up. And we'll just go ahead and run our after start checklist so you can see that. We'll make sure our battery is selected to ship battery and our battery cart is put away, disconnected from the aircraft. Our avionics are on, our beacon is on, our nav lights are on. And we've got our radios set up. We won't really be needing those today. We're just going to do a short flight over to Allentown, Pennsylvania. We'll go ahead and make sure our cowl flaps are open. We'll go ahead and close our fire extinguisher hatch there. Get that closed. And make sure we're making hydraulic pressure here. Normal operating is, as you can see, this green band. It's from about 650 up to around 950 psi. There is a relief valve in the system itself that discharges pressure at 1050 psi, so you can't go over that. So you want that in the green band. This front gauge is our landing gear, and this is our system pressure itself. One thing I have noticed that is not simulated correctly. When landing gear is retracted, this should go to 0 and stay at 0 until you extend landing gear again, but this always stays at the operating pressure there, which is okay. We don't need the fine details to have fun flying this thing. So again, we're going through our checks. We've got our altimeter set. We got our gyros are uncaged. Our gyro pilot is uncaged. Now there are some checklists that call for mixture to be set to auto lean here. And from what I've found in the research I've done, you don't actually need to do that. And I'll explain why once we get to our run-up position. But you don't need to set it auto lean. You can leave it in auto rich. Fuel booster pumps are off. Our generators are on, and these are set to neutral. Get a little bit more light on in here. Let's take our cockpit lights on so you can see what's going on. There we go. It'll help a little bit. Turn our spotlights up. And turn our parent lights up a little bit so we can see what's going on. Go. Alright, so for taxi, the DC3 has a free castering tail wheel. And I have that mod installed from Duckworks. The default DC3 and even just the regular Duckworks mod does not have a free castering tail wheel. It is steerable by the rudder pedal. So it's fairly simple. Push on left rudder, you're going to turn left, right rudder, you're going to turn right. With the free castering, if you have that installed, that is a more realistic feel to the DC3. Basically, it can spin 360 degrees. It's not connected to any linkages. It doesn't turn with the rudder or anything of that nature. It's just a free spinning tail wheel. So that makes taxiing a little bit difficult if you don't have a differential throttle quadrant. So in turns, for example, if you wanted to turn left, you would apply a little bit extra power on your right engine and a little bit of left brake to swing that tail wheel and swing your tail around to make that turn. That being said, when you're taxiing straight, you have to be careful and lock your tail wheel. Otherwise, your tail's just going to be kind of shimmying around back there, and you're going to have to constantly be on the brakes to keep yourself straight. So when you're taxiing straight, tail wheel locked, before your turn, unlock the tail wheel, a little bit of opposite engine power, and a little bit of right brake or left brake, whichever direction you're turning, and that should bring your tail around. Some do's and don'ts for taxiing DC3. Do taxi slow. Be very careful when you're taxiing this airplane. It's a very large airplane, and inertia builds up very quickly. So when you're getting ready to turn and you're going too fast, you could basically ground loop the airplane because you turn too far and you can't correct it back the other direction. And don't underestimate the size of this thing. It's 95 feet from your wingtip to wingtip. So be mindful of space, and you also want to try to avoid pivot turns if you can. A pivot turn is where you lock one wheel to try to pivot around that wheel. That can cause undue side load on your landing gear and could even pop the tire off of its bead and cause issues. So try to avoid the pivot turns if you can. And those tips are straight from C-47 operating manual from about 1944. So our center head temperatures are coming up here, so we'll go ahead and take our parking brake off. Now this does have chocks installed, so you can do this one of two ways. You can either click this switch to take your chocks off, or you can hit the parking brake button and then hit it again, and we should start easing forward. Check my brakes, and then unlock my tail wheel and start to turn. A little bit of opposite engine power. Get ourselves swung around here. It's a little tricky, honestly, to do the free-cast steering tail wheel. I just recently installed the mod, and it's taken some getting used to, but it is a much more realistic procedure here for the DC3. Unfortunately, we don't have too long of a taxi here today, so I'm going to leave the tail wheel unlocked for this short distance here. We're going across this runway over to runway 32 here at Newark. And once we get there, we'll do the run-up, and then we'll do the takeoff as well. It's a bit difficult to see the taxiways here at the 1935 Newark, so I may end up in the grass a little bit. You have to forgive me. We're going to kind of scoot over here towards these hangars and then make a right turn. Runway 32 is just off to our right here. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this tail wheel here as we're going straight. You want to keep your RPM around 1,000. As you can see, we're idling around 1,000 RPM, and that'll keep you a nice speed, nice slow speed. You can kind of bump it up to 1,200 or so. So now we're going to plan ahead for our turn. We're going to unlock our tail wheel and start easing on a little bit of brake, a little bit of opposite engine power, and get ourselves slowly swung around to the right here. Can't be in a hurry with a DC3. It's she's a big airplane. We're mostly empty today, so we're not too heavy, but at full max gross, you're looking at over 26,000 pounds, so it can get pretty heavy pretty quick. Alright, we're going to be going straight here for a little bit, so go ahead and lock the tail wheel The way that tailwheel lock works, there's a pin connected to a cable that's connected to that lock that's underneath the throttle quadrant there. And when you lock that, it drops the pin into a slot that keeps your tailwheel locked. And there is a little bit of movement you can do with the tailwheel locked. That's only a few degrees to each side, so you got to be careful with that. But if you do end up putting too much side load, that pin will shear off and not damage anything else, which is a nice fail-safe for you. Some PBY Catalinas over there, and some old tri-motors. Ease over here to runway 32. See, I can get a little bit of turn out of that tail wheel, even though it's locked. I can just ease on the brake just a little bit, and it'll scooch it over. I think this is our runway right here. As I said, a bit hard to see on this 1935 mod where you're supposed to be going, because there's no marked taxiways, just like it would have been back in 1935. I missed that one completely because I couldn't see it. But that's what the grass is for, right? I'll go ahead and put my landing lights on too, actually, so I can see what I'm doing, maybe. Right, I'm gonna unlock the tail wheel again, and a little bit of left brake, a little bit of, or right brake, excuse me, and left engine power to get ourselves straightened out here. Not too much, just nice and easy. And we'll come to a stop. Right about there. Alright. So for our run-up, we'll take our parking brake on and lock the tail wheel. Let's come down here to where we can see what we're doing. Booster pumps are off. Mixtures are auto-rich. And again, I just left those there because we don't need to use auto-lean. On a small airplane, small carbureted airplane, it's a good idea. Pull your mixture out a little bit when you're taxiing. That avoids loading up the plugs with too much fuel. But on this aircraft, we don't really need to do that. And the reason for that is this has an automatic mixture control. And essentially how that works is there's a diaphragm that is inside of a canister with a rod connected to it. And as the atmospheric pressure changes, that diaphragm either expands or contracts and moves that rod to meter the fuel that's going into your carburetor. So if you're idling at 1000 RPM, you have an auto rich, it's going to automatically enrich in that mixture enough to keep the engine running but not load the plugs up. So you can leave this in auto rich until you get up to cruise and then pull it into auto lean. And that's just what I've learned from various different articles and things that have been written about flying the DC3. You can just leave that there. So again, run-up checks we're going through. We've got our cowl flaps are open. Our fuel selectors are on the main tanks, left main and right main here. On the other side, a little hard to see that selector there. And we're going to go to 1700 RPM to perform our governor check for our propellers. So let's ease both engines up there to 1700. Gotta be a little slow on your power changes here. These old gauges take a little bit to register, but there's about 1700. So we're going to cycle our props here, these two levers, and what we're looking for is a drop down to around 1200 RPM and then back up to 1700. We'll cycle it through a couple times. They go a little bit lower on this airplane. So back up there to 1700. We'll cycle it one more time. And that's serving two purposes. What we're doing is we're checking to make sure that the governor for the propellers is properly calibrated to our prop levers, but we're also getting warm oil into that prop governor so that it changes in the time frame we want it to when we actually need it to change. While I'm here at 1700, I also like to check the prop feather pumps. So we'll key the left one first, and we'll see that drop and immediately undo it. Normally what you would also see, your first officer would be looking at your output on your generators to make sure you have a drop there. And we have a properly unfeathered left prop. We'll do the right. There's that drop, unfeather. All we're doing there is checking to make sure that the feathering pumps work. Pull back to idle here, 1000 RPM. There's other parts of the feathering system that we aren't checking with that, but for the purpose of a run-up, that is a perfectly acceptable check for us to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run my left engine up to 30 inches of manifold pressure, and then we'll do a mag check. And you can also check your superchargers as well, but for the purpose of this flight, we don't need those. Again, your superchargers are these yellow ones here. And what you would do is, while your engine is at 1700 RPM, you would go ahead and throw the boosters or the blowers into high, then advance to 30 inches, and then throw it into low and make sure you had a change in your manifold pressure here. But as I said, we won't be doing that for the purpose of this flight. So left engine up to 30 inches, and you need to do this one at a time because these engines have a lot of horsepower, and both of them running at full tilt or nearly full tilt will overcome your parking brake. So left engine, flip the mag there, good drop, back to both. RPMs come back, left mag, good drop, back to both. And we'll go ahead and check our temperatures for left engine as well. Center head temps look good, oil temps look good, good oil pressure and good fuel pressure. Normally you would also have a vacuum gauge that you'd be checking, but we don't have a vacuum gauge in this airplane for some reason. So good check on that. We'll go ahead and idle. Make sure it comes down to around 600 RPM. And then we'll immediately go back up to 1000 RPM just to avoid lugging the engine. There's about 600. Let's go back up to 1000 to keep it running, keep it from loading up. And then we'll go up to 30 inches on the right engine. There's 30 inches there. Good oil pressure, good fuel pressure. Right mag check. Good drop. Back to both. And left mag for right engine. Good drop. And back to both. And temperatures are looking okay. So pull that back to idle. And immediately back to 1000. You can hear the engine try to start lugging, almost die out at such a low RPM. There we go, back up to 1000. Okay, so that's our run up complete. And now it's time for our before takeoff checks. So what we're going to do is turn our pitot heat on. Switch right there, and I'm not going to turn the de-icing off right now. We'll probably need it as we come through the clouds though, because it's cold today. Pitot heat's on, booster pumps can come on, cowl flaps can go to trail. The trail position is essentially a open as needed. They're basically a neutral position. and they will open more the faster you go. So that's a good position for takeoff. In the open position, it actually creates a buffeting effect over the tail, so that's why you want to have those in trail. So trail and then off. Normally on this selector, you would have several different off positions. You would have closed, off, trail, and off, and then open. So what you would normally do is you'd set it to open, off, and what that does is it stops hydraulic fluid from flowing back or continuing to give pressure to the little cylinders that are on the cowl flaps. But for the sake of this, we don't have that, so we'll just have to make up a little bit. And that's a little bit of the case with a few other things on this airplane. So we can use flaps on takeoff, but we won't. We have enough runway to not have to worry about that. Our trims are set to neutral. Neutral on all of our trims, which is what we want. You can use trim to help you a little bit, but it does not need it. Our carb heat is cold and locked. That was one thing I didn't actually check in the run-up. That was my bad. To check it, you just pull it back. But usually you don't need carb heat in a DC3 unless it's really cold out. So transponder is on, and we are good to go. Let's go and get lined up. Parking brake can come off. Tail wheel is still locked. Let's see if I got enough runway here. I think I will try to back taxi a little bit here and then turn around for takeoff just to give myself some more room. The runway that's behind you is of no use to you. So go ahead and unlock here. A little bit of right engine power. A little bit of left brake. Swing myself around. Take the power out. And then ease on the right brake to get myself straight. Turn ourselves around here. Just a little bit of left power. And right brake. I'm not actually locking the brake. It's locked, but we won't do that. A little bit more power. Come on, big girl. So see, I'm easing on and off the brake, trying to keep that inside tire rolling and not locking it, which is what we want to avoid. That's that pivot turn I was talking about. And ease that power out as we come around so you don't overshoot. And that's pretty well lined up. So I will try to straighten my tail wheel up. Stop. Then go ahead and lock that. Shift G. So cowl flaps are trail, boost pumps are on, landing lights are on, tail wheel is locked, trims are set, props are full forward, mixtures are auto rich. So we'll go to our full power for takeoff is 48 inches, which is that red line right there on our manifold pressure gauge. So we'll advance to 30 inches, ease off the brakes, go to 48, and we should see 2,700 RPM. The tail will start to come up on its own. If you're heavy, you can help it forward a little bit, and then keep her on the ground until about 85, 90 knots. In this case, we're at miles per hour, but same numbers apply. About 90 miles an hour, you want to rotate. So that's what we're going to do now. So ease up the power. On the brakes still. There's 30 inches off the brakes, going up to 48 inches. There's 48 inches. There's the tail starting to come up. Get a little rudder in there. Keep that wing down. A little windy today. There's 90. Rotate. Positive brake. Gear up. Tap the brakes. I'll let the airplane accelerate. There's 100. We'll pull the power back 2,500 RPM and 42 inches of manifold pressure. And we'll go ahead and start a left turn here. As we're climbing out. Climbing out about 120. Which is a good number. Climb power at 42 inches is our normal climb, which gives us 1,050 horsepower on each engine. Come up into the clouds here. Lovely weather. Let's turn there on that heading. Try to keep it at 120. You can pull the power back a little bit more to around 40. That's where I like to be. That's a little bit safer, I feel like. But just keep that climb going. So we'll do our after takeoff checks here now that we're establishing the climb. Everything's pretty stable. Take our boost pumps off. Confirm our landing gear is up. Our flaps are up. Our hydraulic selector can go to our forward position here for the gyro pilot. Get a little fast there with 40 inches. Another alternative is you could pull back to about 2,400 and 35 inches, and that'll save you a little bit of fuel as well in your climb. Look like we need any anti-ice yet, so we'll leave that off. Cow flaps can stay in trail position. Landing gear is locked and up position. Looking good. Climbing out nicely. We'll go up to 4,500 on this flight. But this is really all that I wanted to talk about in this video, was the taxi and takeoff and the initial climb. We'll get to the cruise and the descent and landing in other videos here coming up, so stay tuned for that. Picking up a little ice there. I'll go ahead and take that on my windshield de-ice and my prop de-ice and wing de-icers. So, as we're still climbing here, I will sign off in this video, and again we'll see you on the next one for the cruise and descent and landing of the DC3. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're having a good day wherever you are at. So long.